So our next module is going to look at myths, objections, people that are resistant to this or don't understand it. Why should we bother? This takes time. I don't have it. A lot of myths out there floating around. Let's talk about the first one here, Carlos. You have 3 of them. Let's dive into the first one.
Okay, so I guess the myth, our people are experienced. I just got to be able to read the screen a little bit. Let me see. Okay, so our people are experienced and know how to coordinate and communicate with other stakeholders, so we don't need to meet in advance.
Right.
That is absolutely wrong. Because this is the maintenance part, right? You have to have the team. They have to be trained. They need to know what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And you need to meet with your stakeholders in advance, right? Because that's the secret sauce. Because if you know what their needs are, you can respond to their needs in advance. So you don't want them to have to ask you for the information, right? You want to be able to have that information for them. And that comes over time, right? You have to, as you engage with them during events, you kind of get a feel for this is what they need. So we should have this kind of beforehand. So that kind of helps us to kind of develop. And that's part of that maintenance, to make sure we have this kind of information available when it's needed. And you got to, my emergency preparedness and business resilience group was a decent size, but it wasn't enough for major events. That's why, with emergency assignments within the company, we took a lot of people that their normal job has them dealing with customers at a regular basis, or other stakeholders, and they became our liaisons for major events. And they would go up to the state EOC, they would go to a municipality as a municipal liaison, they would go to New York City Emergency Management or Westchester County or Rockland County or Orange County EOCs, and they would be our mouthpiece and our ears to hear what's happening and provide information to those stakeholders.
Can you give us maybe an example of a real life thing that happened that illustrates this point?
Well, I mean, we talked a little bit about the Northeast blackout would be a good example. And, if we would have sent just a company representative that was able to explain how you restore the system, that I think that would have been a little bit of an issue. But when I was the one tagged to head down to New York City Emergency Management, I knew the process of restoring the system, but could explain it more in a layman's term. And that's important because you have to explain to a lot of different people some technical information of how a system restoration and how the mechanism is and how the protocol is, and then maintain an updated status for them throughout that entire process, which, in our case took almost 19 hours, I believe. And you're sitting there and you're explaining to, it's from the mayor down to, the liaison for Verizon that's sitting next to you. And you're telling them, well, this is where we're at. This is the next area that's going to be coming back into service. Right. That's important, right? Because if you're telling them something and setting that expectation is important. And I did that right from the get-go because I knew when you're restoring the system, it's about balancing load and capacity. But if there's an imbalance, you're going to have some networks or some circuits are going to trip out just for saving the circuit or saving the network. So, and that happened, so I set that expectation early. And as the status changed, told them, okay, we're restoring this network. Boom, it just tripped. We're going to go back to square one, and we got to go back and rework the loading and things like that. So that really paid off. And like I said, that became an annual maintenance effort with us to make sure our stakeholders knew that process, because leadership changes and you want to make sure that that leadership understands that process, right? That's the constant maintenance, because people change, just like I change, everybody else changes leadership, and you got to make sure that they're up to date with the information.
So tactically, it sounds like you overcame this myth, right? There's a resistance. We don't need to meet in advance.